Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, What We Can't Not Talk About, the podcast of the Austin Institute for the Study of Family and Culture. If that's our name, if what we care about is family, I think there's one thing we cannot talk about, and that's love. We focus on family, we focus on marriage, and we know that there is a marriage crisis. In our in-person programs and on our podcast too, we've often discussed this. We've discussed the broad cultural causes. We talked about the contemporary fear of commitment, the problems of choice, the fact that we all want to live an eternal youth. We talked about the effects of contraception that make us think that our bodies are just meant for us to have pleasure and they're unattached to generativity. They do not have nothing to do with committed relationship. We talked about the costs of housing in some of our programs, and we talk often about the risks of divorce. But how about all the single people out there? And I know that there are plenty among our listeners. What about those people out there who keep saying that they want to get married? They're still searching. Talking about those people that go on 1,000 dates with equally determined singles who also want to get married. And still nothing happens. So what if, in addition to the broad cultural causes, and this is the question of today, what if in addition to those broad cultural phenomena that we address and need to be addressed, the marriage crisis has individual roots too? What if it isn't just society, but it is us who are looking for the wrong things in the wrong places, in the wrong ways? This is what we will try to do today. To look at the obstacles, if any, to love and to family life that come from within, that come from ourselves, rather than from the outside. So to address these topics, I am very lucky to say that we have on our show a real expert, Dr. Matthew Breuninger, professor of psychology and fellow of the Austin Institute. Good morning, Matthew, and welcome on our show.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Professor Breuninger is a licensed clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at Franciscan's University, and the founder of Wellspring Counseling and Coaching. Also, he recently published his first book, Finding Freedom in Christ, Healing Life's Hurts, a book which I absolutely recommend. So now, before we get into what do you think about what I just said? Who's more responsible, society or the individual?
That is, look, that's the $100 million question. But I think you framed it right, which is, I think there are both societal sort of impacts and causes, and I think there's individual impacts and causes. And I think where the real interesting work is at the intersection of the two, because the individual always exists in society. I don't exist in a vacuum. I'm always in a culture. I'm always in a society. My individuality has been shaped dramatically by housing costs, by prevailing attitudes around marriage, and by access to things like contraception, pornography, right? Who I am has been shaped by societal forces. And so I don't exist independent of those. And at the same time, I shape and form those. And so I think anytime we think about this, I like the approach of doing the independent work, saying, okay, what are the societal factors? What are the individual factors? But then I think the deepest, hardest, most beneficial work is saying, now that intersection between who I am and the society and culture I live in, like that's where the real answer lies. And that is very hard to get at. I think empirically sometimes, because there are so many factors, there are so many variables, and we so often want to reduce things to a single variable. Like, here's the cause or problem. And it's just not the reality. Like, very few things in life can be boiled down to like a univariate cause, a single cause. It's almost like everything is multivariate.
Yeah, so, it's just like, I'm thinking of like how you create a beautiful house. And it's not just about where you buy the furniture. It's not just about the color. And there's something about the backyard, and there is something about, is there music when you get in or not? And somehow our lives are the same way, right? So we need to, without obsessing, but like to work a little bit on everything. And I know that we've addressed a lot of the policy issues, a lot of philosophical issues, but the beauty of having someone like you on the show is that it helps us go a little bit deeper into the individual part of the work. So to introduce this recording and how it happened. So it's a product of you coming and visiting us a little over a month ago and giving one of the best talks I've heard on the topic. The title was, "Why Am I Not Getting the Love That I Want?" And so my hope today is to basically revisit that journey you did, with us, guiding us through, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that's where I think, for me, I have a particular interest as a psychologist in those individual issues, how those individual issues unfold in particular cultures and contexts. But yeah, I'd love to kind of get into some of at least my broad thoughts about it.
Yeah. And you're a great speaker, as everyone will very soon realize. So the title was, "Why Am I Not Getting the Love That I Want?" So first of all, what is the love that I want? Where does the love that I want start?
Yeah. So I think I think it's really helpful. Maybe this is cliche as a psychologist to say, but so much of how we think about love, so much of how we think about the content of love, what it is, and how we want to receive it and how we should give it, so much of that is shaped by our families of origin. I mean, a huge portion of what you think love is has been laid down in your mind and in your heart, sort of neurobiologically, psychologically, emotionally, from just the air you breathed in the family you grew up in. Like, did your parents lean into your feelings and desires? Did they make space for you? Was it conveyed to you that you were too much? You were too difficult? There were certain parts of you that they expected you to cut off or alienate in order to stay in relationship with them? Did you experience having to sort of earn their love? By the way, very few of these things are ever explicitly communicated. Like, very rarely does a parent say, "I need you to cut off your shame and embarrassment in order to stay in relationship with me." It's just felt, it's experience. It's what gets talked about, what gets noticed, what gets ignored, what gets diminished, what gets validated. Um, and so much of how we think about love has been shaped by our early childhood experiences, our family of origin. Why is that important? It's important because we set out into the world and we launch out into the world sort of with these glasses on, with this perspective that this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. This is what love is. And this is what love means. And sometimes we start reenacting those old patterns that we learned. We start finding people like our fathers, like our mothers, who love us in these ways, or who express love in these ways. And what we're left with is either like dysfunctional relationships, unhappy relationships, or unhealthy relationships. And there's this disparity between like the ache in our heart for what we like deeply desire, but what we keep attracting or getting. And I think some of that can be uncovered if we do the work of looking at our families of origin. And that can begin by looking at the marriage between our parents. What did you see day in, day out? Like, did you ever see your dad like grab your mom in the kitchen and twirl her around and give her like a passionate kiss? Did you see your dad hold your mom's hand lovingly? Did you see your dad foster like or nurture a gentle affection with her? How did your parents express love? Was it safe? Did it feel secure? Did it feel like your parents could bring each of themselves in their entirety into the moment with one another? Or did they have to like cover up and hide or pretend? What did you sense? What did you feel? What did you notice? And then how did they love you? You know, my dad shows love through giving gifts. It is like he's just very generous in that way. What's interesting for me is I just like as a who I am, gifts aren't particularly, I don't receive them as like loving. Um, but I saw my dad give lots of gifts growing up. I saw his like primary mode of expressing love being through gifts. But what I wanted was I wanted somebody who could like make space for me, who could like receive me and all of my thoughts and questions, my big feelings, like I wanted somebody who would like take the time to sit with me. And and so this was sort of interesting for me because I in some ways sort of adopt like how my dad loves and how my mom loves. And that's what I see. And that's kind of what I think love is. But yet like deeper parts of me want something different, want something more, want something. And so I think going back and exploring that. What did you see? Like, and pulling it apart very deliberately, intentionally, questioning it. And this can feel super disloyal, by the way. And I want to say that, like, to go into our families of origin and to begin to critique or ask questions about, or it can oftentimes feel like we're being ungrateful or we're being disloyal. And there's a spirit in which we can do this that says, look, I know my parents loved me and I know my parents tried their best, but there's still valuable insight to be gained and work to be done in taking an honest look and appraisal of my early childhood.
So as usual, it's a pleasure to listen to you. I would not want to stop you, but I let me just say a couple of things that came to mind as you were speaking. So that when we look at our family of origins, it's not just the love we received from them. So how my mom loved me and my dad loved me. There is also, and this is, I think, a very important fact, the love we saw between them, which, I have several friends that think is like, it's not important that I keep loving my husband as long as we stay together until kids are out of college, right? So I hear what you say, and I would have a provocative question coming. I know that a lot of the people that listen to this show, come from broken families, step parents, and so I would be curious to know, and they can write it in the comments, like how many would feel, and I know this is weird, but like would even feel a level of disgust at the idea of seeing their parents kissing or.
I ask my students this. So I'm teaching this class on human development, and we're talking about emerging adulthood and young adulthood, and love and romantic attraction and affection. And so I asked my students, I've 85 freshmen and sophomores. I said, how many of you like have seen your dad kiss your mom? I mean, like a proper kiss. And the number of them that were just like disgusted and horrified. It felt like, no, that's just, oh, ew, Dr. B, that's gross. Like, ew, no, like maybe they do that, but they should like
hide
that out there. Like, and so there are going to be some cultural variations and things like this, right? But why? And why would we imagine and why would we sort of expect that the love of our parents, seeing this passionate love between our parents, why would we expect to be like disgusted by this? Why would we be? It should be this profound expression. I've been reading JP2 a lot recently for this talk I have to give. And his theology of the body is one of the audiences, his gift of self that he talks about. And that in a marriage, it sort of finds its highest expression in the conjugal act. But like, wouldn't you expect to see husbands and wives giving themselves in this way to various degrees throughout the day, including with like affectionate pecks and kisses and hugs and gentle touches and teasing. The absence of seeing that, and here's the point, and you're right on with this. The absence of seeing that has shaped you. It has shaped you in some way. It has shaped how you see and view love and affection and attraction and romance. And so just to appreciate that to say like, well, I never saw that. Okay, well, that has shaped your vision and view of it. Just intuitively, implicitly, it has shaped your vision.
And if I may, to continue on this front, it may shape us also as like the us not getting the love that we want, as you were saying.
Oh yeah.
You're looking for the same things, right? So maybe there is you're craving physical, you're craving a hug, but at the same time, if a man or if a woman hugs you, you still immediately think like, this should not be happening. This is so wrong. So there was also another thing that you said, which I think talks of the intersection of cultural and individual, because like what you were saying is like how we've been loved by our parents, which again, we should not think I want to go back to like no parent is perfect. Like this should not be an episode that we have like to criticize parents. There is a lot more that goes into what we're discussing. But one thing though, where I see the cultural influence on the way the individual is shaped is that inadvertently, I would argue, our parents are valuing in us the things that are wrong in the culture. So for instance, for a lot of women, the love of their dad comes from your PhD, right? Or how many papers did you publish, which has nothing to do with your fertility or like you're being, your feminine genius.
Yes. Now, I mean, this kind of dovetails into a related point. So I think so much of how we think about love is what we see in our parents' love between each other. But then the love we receive from our parents. So my definition of a wound that I sort of unpack in my book is I think a wound is the failure to be loved the way you're created to be loved, or being blocked or obstructed from loving the way you were created to love. So wounds arise when we're not loved the way we were created to be loved, or we're blocked from loving the way we were created to love. And so then we have to say, well, what is love? The classical definition is sort of to will the good of the other. Well, then you say like, okay, well, what are the goods that I should want for you? What are the goods that you were made to have that I should will for you if I'm loving you? And the reason I think a parent's love is an important part of this conversation is because when our parents fail to love us or provide those goods for us, wounds arise. And oftentimes what happens is we end up seeking people. And this is like an important point. We end up being attracted to and seeking people whose wounds fit with ours rather than people who really fulfill the deepest desires of our heart. Because when somebody's wounds fit with mine, what I mean by that is they encounter me or receive me in a way that doesn't touch or hurt or activate my wounds or distress.
Give me an example. Give us an example. Give us an example.
Okay, so one common thing I see, like say in marriage therapy, is you have a young woman who is maybe she's learned in her family that she doesn't have a voice. Her voice isn't valued. What is valued is her just being sort of service to the family. So just like work hard, be of service, but keep your mouth shut. You don't have a voice. You don't have an opinion. Your thoughts on a topic don't matter. And maybe her father's sort of very domineering, aggressive, domineering sort of thing. She doesn't have a voice, but her hard work and her service to the family is highly valued. Okay. She gets into college and she's not good at expressing her opinion, her thoughts. So when people say, hey, where do you want to go for lunch? Oh, I don't care. Where do you want to go? Like super passive. Hey, what do you want for dinner? Oh, it doesn't matter. What do you? So this type of person feels really uncomfortable expressing a voice. If they were to date somebody who said, hey, like, tell me what you think about this. What do you want? It would feel really uncomfortable. The very type of man this woman is drawn to is a man who has a strong, confident personality, who knows what he wants and can tell her like what's what. Because she's shy and demure and passive, she finds herself not having her wound of not being valued, not having a voice. That's not activated if a guy's telling her what to do. It feels safe. So she finds herself attracted to these guys who are very confident, very domineering, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to eat. Here's how you're going to dress. Here's how many kids we're going to have. Here's where we're going to live. And the irony is that oftentimes the very thing that draws us to people because our wounds fit becomes the thing that ends the relationship or makes the relationship unbearable down the road. So now, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, she has no voice. I want to go to this church. Hey, it doesn't matter. I don't think I can have kids anymore. My body's tired and broken and hurting, and my mental health is failing. Doesn't matter. Hey, I'd like to spend more time with female friends, and I feel lonely and disconnected. Doesn't matter. Like, she's chosen a man. Her wounds have chosen a man who who's confident, who will tell her who will be her voice for her. And in the short term, that feels very comfortable. How about guys who need to feel needed? They grew up in families where their value was in being needed, showing what they could do. So now they find women who are helpless or who don't have a voice, and they feel needed. They're drawn to a certain type of woman because that's where they feel safe. Imagine, what would it be like to be a man who needs to feel needed and have a woman who doesn't need you? I feel really uncomfortable. A confident, assured woman with a PhD would feel really uncomfortable. Well, what would it be like to be a woman who doesn't have a voice and be with a man who's like trying to draw you out, trying to have you express your, it would feel really uncomfortable. So I think very often what happens is these self-protection strategies we adopt, we end up letting our self-protection, our self-preservation, like make the choice for us. My self-protection strategies are drawn to certain vocations. And this isn't to dog teachers, but I told you this sort of half joking. But like 95% of like academic faculty, and I'm in this. So like we're like nerds and losers in high school who weren't taken seriously and didn't have a voice and were overlooked. And so now we're drawn to a context where like people hang on our every word. You know, you have 40 students who lap up your wisdom, and each week they want to hear what you have to say, and nobody questions you or challenges you, or you're the big dog in the room now. You know, our wounds draw us toward careers, toward professions, and toward people. Certain people are attracted to me because of my woundedness and because of the self-protection strategies I've adopted. And so a big part of this work is like recognizing my wounds or where I wasn't loved the way I needed to be loved, and starting to address those things so that I choose from a place of interior freedom rather than from a place of woundedness.
Because I think that the part that is important about what you said is that 6-7 years down the road, that's what causes the relationship, or that's why, you know, the professor doesn't want to be a professor anymore, because it's just like, okay, I got my doses of narcissism, now I'm exhausted. But the thing that, so if that's true, because otherwise one could think, well, you know, as long as the two are happy, right? She doesn't want to have a voice, is domineering, but ultimately we all have needs, we all are human beings, so those things will emerge, they will come up.
They will emerge, that's the point. And those goods that we were made for won't be nurtured, they won't be provided for, and we will feel a certain lack or ache, or like you were meant to have a space where your voice is heard and appreciated and valued. And if you don't, you might feel a certain amount of safety for some time, but it will emerge eventually in various ways at various times, and you won't be able to avoid it forever.
And so this leads me to think, you know, I think a bad education I had on the role of psychology and like doing introspection was that, you know, things will just fix you when they happen, right? So you will, if you're not ready for a relationship, you have wounds, you know, you can look into that with the person you're dating. But like going back to the beginning of our talk, like what I was, the guess that, yes, there are these broader cultural phenomena, but that probably, you know, we know what's the status of the family today. And most likely, most of us have wounds that come from the way either we were loved or our parents loved each other, or the things they told us were valuable, right? So because they were also receiving. So the thing that I'm guessing here is that it's probably, if you're one of those thousands, millions of people that are like still trying to date, committed, you know, people that also want to get married just like you do, it's probably time to stop criticizing the culture, society, women, men, and like look into yourself. And so there, that leads me to not only your practice and your Ask a Catholic Therapist account that everyone should follow, and it will be linked. And we're your biggest promoter here, believe me.
Thank you.
But there's an article you wrote that I found a couple of years ago that was about you used a story that C.S. Lewis describes in The Great Divorce.
Yeah.
And you used it to talk about our fear of change. So I think that's one thing that I would like to talk about. And like, are we afraid of change? Should we be afraid of change? What is the change that we should welcome?
Yeah, I mean, I say this without exaggeration, but when people come to therapy, I think it is such a profoundly brave thing to do. It takes so much courage, because it means that people are ready to take an honest look at themselves and risk changing. And change is scary, because change is almost inevitably painful in some way. Like, and however you think about it, if you talk about defenses that we build up in life, or masks, or self-protection or preservation strategy, we've adopted ways of being in the world. I show up, I wake up, and I have, through certain repeated acts and habits, I show up in a certain way, and this way feels like me. It's just who I am. And this way of being in the world has been cultivated and shaped and adopted and modeled for me, and I've chosen parts of it, and it is this blend of these things, and it shapes how I show up and how I interact with reality. And it feels oftentimes very coherent and pretty secure, like, until it doesn't. And there's usually moments in life that confront us. And these are blessed and graced moments, and we never feel that way in them. But in hindsight, these are blessed and graced moments where my way of being, like, is no longer adequate to confront reality. And maybe that's because a marriage has fallen apart. Maybe that's because we've lost a child, or we've lost a relationship, or a parent has died, or we've lost a job, but something in reality confronts me, and like, I can't meet it, at least not in like a healthy, whole way. And what this invites me to do is to begin to like dismantle my way of being and evaluate it and see. And so the loss of a relationship, or maybe you've been unable to maintain relationships for much longer than 6 or 8 months. You have this serial dating sort of, like, change is painful, because change means I'm taking a part or parts of myself that I've adopted for reasons. I mean, that's why the self-protection language I like, is because self-protection recognizes that my way of being in the world has been adopted because it like did something adaptive for me. And there are huge parts of I will tell you, like, doing this own work myself, parts of my personality, being charismatic, using humor. I learned that, like, these were really helpful. These were adaptive in getting by in the particular high school I went to, in getting the attention I wanted in my own family. And then they get rewarded, they get reinforced, they work. I put myself in situations where they're valued, so they get reinforced even more. And then, 30 years later, get into a marriage and something happens, and I have to like look at these parts of myself, and I have to say, like, wait a second, this charismatic dimension of my personality, my sarcasm, my humor, what are those? Why did I adopt those? Where did they come from? What did they serve? And am I willing to consider a new way of being that lets those go? But I promise you, and this is why change is scary, if I let those things go, there's going to be a certain amount of like vulnerability to life that I feel. There's going to be a certain amount of like rawness or vulnerability. I'm going to feel exposed. Oftentimes the things I adopt to keep me feeling safe and secure in the world. And to change means, I think, to open up like layers of what feels very vulnerable. Um, and so, yeah, change is almost always hard or scary.
No, I'm thinking of something maybe women can relate to, the women that are listening. It's related to the way we look, right? So if we come from families where the mother felt love because the father would tell her, you look great, you look beautiful, and like how letting go of that beauty might be necessary, not only because we age, but because, as a psychologist, how much the obsession with it can become an obstacle to everything else, right? And like, and to be loved in the right way, to be able to, to care less about the appearances and more about the content and how you're spending time together.
How vulnerable would it feel to not wear makeup, not wear as much makeup, to not emphasize or lead with looks, but to lead with the heart, or to lead with my personality rather than, like, that's a vulnerability. You get married, you start having babies, and bodies change. And here's a great example, Mariana. If you find somebody who loves you because of your looks, you grew up in a family where like looks were valued and validated, and you find somebody who values you because of your looks, and then you get married, you start having babies, and bodies change. And bodies change in ways you like can't control. And you stake so much of the love you receive and the love you give on those looks. Imagine the anxiety that comes up as your body starts to change, and maybe you get stretch marks, and maybe you get wrinkles, and maybe you get, and like that protective strategy, our looks can be a protection.
Yeah, and may I say, this is a very simple example, and it might be taken by a lot of the people that listen to us as superficial, but the ones that take us as superficial, I bet that half of those are doing Botox, both men and women. This is superficial, but it's the society we're living in. We are in a society. I'm pretty convinced we live in a society where looks precede us. Like there's almost nothing we can do, and even when the looks are bad and excessive, but that's what counts, right? What people see is who we are through our Instagram account. What?
Yeah, Instagram's a great example. Like Instagram thrives on like appearance. And if you look at the Instagram accounts you follow, what will you notice about? What do you notice about them? Like, look at the looks of the people. Look at how manicured they are. Look at how, looks. Yeah. People don't like to, here's a huge part of this, that what we're talking about now is the willingness to be honest with ourselves about who we are, what we value, how we show up in the world. Like, if I can't be honest with myself about some of my superficiality, about some of my self-serving, self-seeking, some of my shallowness, I'm going to keep attracting the wrong kind of love. And self-knowledge is a huge part of this.
Yeah.
So let's have self-knowledge.
Yeah, no, part of why I was saying this is that might lead me to the next question, which is, if we said we need to work on ourselves. So there might be, to some extent, we might say everyone needs therapy at this point, right? So everyone should look into themselves. Like, now, I think that's maybe, pushing it too far. There is probably a level, and everyone knows it for themselves. I don't know if as a psychologist you should say, yeah, absolutely, everyone does. But one thing that I would have as a question for you is, with therapy becoming so common, and with this acknowledgement that we all need to do some work on ourselves, how do we decide if and when we need it? And most importantly to me is this: how can people choose the right person? Because and I probably don't need to explain what the why of this question, but like, one thing is morality comes into play.
Yep. So, first, like, does everyone need therapy? No. What we all do need is, we all need a place or a space to engage in like deliberate introspection with people who can be a mirror or reflect to us the process, and who can be honest with us. This can be done in the context of of genuinely good friendship. I think part of the need for therapy now is actually the loss of friendship. Particularly like men lack really good intimate friendships these days. Um, most men. Um, so no, what we all need is that kind of space. Um, when do I think we need a psychologist or a therapist? So because now I'd say many of us don't have that. Some people just need an objective third party person who can be a mirror and sort of a voice of truth as they do this work, unpack, uncover, and discover the truth about themselves. And that's what I think a lot of therapy has become, in lieu of us having the kinds of friendships I think we're made for and that we desire and that we crave and and I think there's all sorts of reasons. I mean, it'd be great to do another podcast on friendship and like.
I mean, tell me when. I'd love to do one with you.
Right, because marriage, and this is what I think we missed. Jacques Maritain has a great book. He and his wife Raisa wrote a book. I think it's called "We Have Been Friends Together" or something like that. But they talk about their marriage and their intellectual journeys woven in there, and their marriage is woven in there. But like marriage is a specific type of friendship. Like if you don't get the friendship right, that's part of not getting the love we want, is actually not knowing how to do friendship. So that's a.
All right. I mean, I'm nodding. For those watching, I can't add anything. Yeah.
So I think like some part of what the psychologist does these days is sort of stands in as a friend in lieu of these types of friendships and says, hey, I'll be an objective third party mirror and voice to tell you the truth as you do this work. But then I think like there's a deeper level of sort of psychology and therapy that's done not for sort of the existential self-discovery stuff, which can be done outside of psychology and friendship. It's the sort of deep clinical work that I think is when somebody's particular issues are impeding their daily ability to live life, or are causing profound distress.
So we're talking about traumatic experiences, anxiety.
Anxiety that's like preventing you from work or showing up to work. I was talking to somebody recently who said, I've been on sort of medical leave because my anxiety at work is so bad. So that would be, a clinical case. Somebody who has depression that's impeding their ability to get out of bed or engage with their wife or children the way they want to. You're having suicidal thoughts, you're having intrusive thoughts from trauma, you're having panic attacks, that's a pretty clear line, right? Where we say like profound distress or significant impact on one's daily living. But I think that, a huge portion of therapy now is like not that. A huge portion of therapy is this like other subset of folks who like, I just need a trusted person who will listen to me as I unpack and unfold, and a space to ask these questions about myself when like nobody else will give me the space to do that. And you might call that, I don't know, sort of an existential therapy or counseling. Like,
yeah, I cannot agree more with you. And I think that's where I value, people who are honest and those friends that that criticize us. Like there was a lesson I learned very early. I was like, only those who love you will correct you. And I think we keep forgetting that, and think that people who correct us are not loving us, and that if we love someone, we should just let them do whatever they want. And it's just so far from true. I want to ask you though more about this. How do we choose the right person? Because like if we find, and it could be the friend, but it could also be for those, of a spiritual director or a spiritual. How do we know that we are really with an honest person, now someone who's changing us into what they think would be a.
Yeah, I think so. So maybe there's 3 points here. The first is this like question of, does the person who we see always have to align with us in terms of like faith and values? And I think the answer there is it depends on what we're working on. If you're working on issues around pornography and masturbation, or like marital issues around the conjugal act, contraception, things like it. Having somebody who's either aligned with you and understands your sort of moral, religious, and value perspectives from the inside can be invaluable. Now, there are cases, there are sort of like rare people who sort of have a reasonable detachedness enough to like let you pursue and go wherever you want. And like, but I think that's oftentimes hard when we're dealing with these issues that have such profound moral consequences. And so what I would say is, um, if the particular issue you're working on dovetails pretty strongly with moral issues, then a sort of sine qua non, a baseline thing you need somebody who has like inside knowledge of those moral issues and is probably in agreement with you. Um, okay. But let's say you're working with somebody or you're working on an issue that maybe doesn't dovetail super strongly with a moral issue. Then I think the other things that you'd want to see, um, are first and foremost, can the person create a space where I have the freedom to feel like I can show up as myself? Like if you feel like you can show up with your moral compass, with your moral values, with your religion, with your ideas, do you feel, and this is it's a felt experience in relationship when I know that I can show up as I am. Like it's the quality of the relation, it's the environment of the relationship. You feel it. In psychology, we call it the therapeutic alliance. It's the quality of the bond between the therapist and the client. And it's the best predictor of how well a client will do in therapy that's within therapist control. The strength of the therapeutic alliance is like the best predictor we have of how well a client will do. It turns out when clients feel like felt, like I get them, like I understand them, they do better. Now, the therapeutic alliance is not only made up with like the quality of the bond, but it's also made up by our agreement on goals and tasks, what we're moving toward and how we're going to get there. So the therapeutic alliance is a collaborative dimension.
So could we say that if you don't feel empathy with anyone who's like, just stop and just find someone else. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay.
Yes. And you should know this in the first like 3 or 4 sessions, you should feel like, dude, my therapist gets me. Like they get me. And it's going to be the questions they ask. It's going to be the tone of voice they use. It's going to be like what they stop you on. So it is not uncommon for clients to start to kind of tear up. And one thing I do, and I think it feels uncomfortable, but clients feel like I get them, is when a client tears up, very often the habit or the impulse is to want to move on pretty quickly. Like change the subject, shift, move, right? And I like to say, like, hey, hold on. So like something really important has just happened. I wonder if you can go back. And that can be an uncomfortable experience for clients, but they feel like, oh, he saw. And not only did he see, but he's not afraid of going there. Like they feel like I get them. And I'll say like, I know this feels hard right now.
Yeah.
I know this feels uncomfortable. Like, can we just acknowledge that for a second? Like, I know that for me is building this therapeutic alliance. If you don't feel that, if you don't feel felt, whoever you are, however, if you don't feel felt in the first like 3, then switch. Yeah. It's not a good fit.
Can I say something? As a Catholic, I would say that the same thing goes for your spiritual director. If you don't have this thing and you start feeling that you can't tell him the truth, it's just 100%. It's meant not to work.
100%. This is, if I have to hide or alienate parts of myself, or if I have to constantly be thinking about how to take care of the therapist or the spiritual director, and that is not how I'm going to grow. If I'm reenacting old relational patterns of like caretaking or silencing myself or in the very relationship I have with the therapist, I'm not going to grow.
Okay. Hey, I want to take you up on the friendship podcast. So we're going to, whenever you will have time. And I know you're very busy, a very busy man, a busy father, and a busy author, a busy therapist, but I'll try to chase you for that. The other thing that I would like to ask you is, to all those people that are out there that are singles and like, besides, thinking about therapy, what is a practical advice? And then if there is anything that you would suggest as a reading, that could be.
Yeah. I mean, I think some practical advice. Some practical advice is carve out time, deliberate time in your life. And this is for all of us. It's hard. I know we're busy and this is uncomfortable, but carve out deliberate time for reflection where you begin to make space to think about the love you saw between your parents and how love was expressed to you. Most of us don't take that kind of time to be reflective. And so carve that time out. The second thing I would say is, and that's related to growing in self-knowledge, so that I start to see and question why I find myself attracted to certain people. Start to notice when you're out in public and you find yourself attracted or drawn to somebody, like drill down into why. What do I find attractive about this person's personality? Oh, it's confident and domineering. Why do I find confidence and domineering so attractive? Is it a pure attraction to it, or is it driven by something in me? Why do I find intelligence so attractive? Why do I find demure meekness so attractive? Why do I find somebody who's helpless? So drill down into that. When you're in public, be reflective about your actual experience of desire and attraction. I think sometimes we take our desires to be the pure things, but our desires can come out of our wounds, our woundedness, our self-protection. So be curious. Space to be curious. Okay.
Reading
thing would be.
Okay. No. One. Okay, great. No, we're all in. Yeah.
That's right. Go to places and spaces where you can meet people. So much of our world, and I'm not against online dating at all. But take the risk and do online dating. Take the risk and go to young adult groups. Are you probably going to meet if you're a devout Catholic, are you probably going to meet your future spouse in a bar on a Friday night? Probably not. At least not the type of spouse you want, probably. And again, broad strokes, God's grace, it's all there. But go to places and spaces where you're more likely to meet the kind of person who has the deep, important values that will make a marriage work. You have to put yourself out there. The problem with dating is that dating is painful, because in dating you will be rejected. I dated a lot. You've dated. You get rejected. You just get rejected, and that sucks and it's painful. But you have to go to places where you're likely to meet people. You have to put yourself in places where you can be available, where you can be encountered, where you can be met, where you can be seen, but places where you can also do that and be yourself. I think most people don't show up to the bar on a Friday night as themselves. You're getting, what's his name? John Eldridge. I think it's John Eldridge had this great line. He said, very rarely have you met a person? What you've met is an elaborate fig leaf. Adam and Eve covered up and hid after the fall. And most of what we do when we go out and encounter each other is show our elaborate fig leaves. And go to places where you feel more comfortable letting that down so that somebody can get to know you and see you.
Come to the Austin Institute, basically. That's what you're saying. Great.
Lovely. Yeah. And what's the book? I'd recommend that book by Jacques Maritain and Raisa.
And I'm gonna read it. I already took note. I'm gonna put it in the link. That's the one that I'm most curious about, because I think there was a conclusion reached. I think it was in a talk a couple of years ago. That was, we have too many friends who could be our spouses, and we're not friends with our spouse.
Yeah. And so learn what it is to have deep friendship with your spouse. Learn what it is to cultivate friendship, which friendships that are vulnerable, that are intimate, that allow you to show up with the fullness of who you are, to let your defenses down, to receive love in those deep places.
So how about I read that book, and then we meet again to discuss that book?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. Great. Matthew, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you're going to be back in Austin again very soon. You're always, always, always very welcome. Thank you for your knowledge, your work, and we'll keep promoting your work and your books and everything you do.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Yep. Thanks, everyone. And remember to follow us, share this episode if you liked it. And remember also to check what's going on in the Austin Institute. There's always something for everyone. Thank you.